All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome back. We just had a webinar a day before, and then we are meeting again. I'm very glad and excited to see the number of attendees are increasing, on my every webinar, which is a good thing. I'm really thankful to you guys. I'm I'm pretty sure you're learning at least something out of these webinars, which is a great thing to do, especially during the lockdown. We know that everyone has a lot of work to do, even from home. But at least now I feel that we are saving a lot of travel time, which I think we should utilize this for self-learning. And that's exactly what even I am doing for myself. So once again, welcome to this webinar on 3ds Max 2021. I hope you all are safe at home and excited for this to see the new version of 3ds Max 2021. And as usual, like generally how I do, before I quickly go through the presentation, I'm just going to put forward the safe harbor statement, which generally we show it to all the customers, saying that in case if you're talking about any new features, we really don't promise the dates of the release, but then it's going to come soon. So if you have some business purchases decisions made based on these, please consider that. So the first thing I would like to talk about is the 3ds Max public roadmap. I'm not going to talk about it in detail because this is now public, which means it's there available on 3ds Max page in the area.autodesk.com. That's area is one page where I would really encourage you guys to have a look at, because there are tons and tons of resources, learning material, specialists who come and share their works and their workflow, which is a great place to learn. And at the same time, from I think last year we had started sharing our roadmap of product roadmap publicly, and we also mentioned what are the forthcoming tools which the artist will be will be getting in the next releases, which we have fulfilled. So there are tons and tons of new features which will be coming, which you guys will be seeing in the newer releases, and we are very excited about that. Of course, 3ds Max 2021, which got released a couple of days back. I won't say it's a big release like how we have it most of the time, but there are some small things which are really cool, and I was really excited to share this with you guys. So if you guys get a chance, please follow this link below, which is inside the 3ds Max page in the area. The first thing that will come up is the public roadmap. So feel free to go through it and just have a look at what's coming in. The first thing which I want to talk about in the 3ds Max 2021 is from the couple of releases, what we have actually worked upon is the performance of the system. We all know that the artist, what are they looking at now is the performance. I know that we have a lot of tools to do a lot many things. People have been generating photorealistic output from many years using the tools which are currently present in the software, but what they lack or what they demand is performance, and that's what we have put in the in all our products in the current releases, like the file IO. In even if when you want to save a file or open a file, the time taken to read the file or write the file is extremely faster. And also the auto backup or the auto save functionality has been enhanced and sped up so fast that the artists can actually feel the performance and feel the difference by when they use the older version or the current version with the same file. So that's actually 50% time saver or 50% faster, which is really a great thing to have. Another cool thing is the third-party developer toolkit. 3ds Max 2021 supports all the plugins which have been compiled for Max 2020. This has been always a challenge that people do not move to the current version, because they believe that it's not stable, which is not the case right now currently. Secondly, the case was people develop a lot of plugins on top of their 3ds Max softwares, right? And with the new releases, those plugins sometimes are not compatible, but we have made sure that most of the plugins, I mean, almost all the plugins are 100% compatible with the previous version of 3ds Max also, which in terms is also true for the OSL shaders, and plugins like scene converters have been added so that you can immediately migrate from your previous version setups to the new version setups. Installer, of course, if any one of you guys have installed 3ds Max 2021, you will see much difference in it, because it's much more simplified and a faster experience. You don't have to click too many buttons to install. The testing shows up like 50% faster, and also results in very greatly based on the machine and specification and internet bandwidth. But in product messaging to prompt users and install missing or the optional components, everything is much more faster than what it used to be in the previous versions, which is a great thing to have. Now, one very good announcement which we did which we did in December 2019 was Arnold 6 was released as a GPU renderer. I mean, like it's both GPU and CPU both, so you can use GPU render as well as CPU render depending on your requirement. I would recommend use GPU for look and development, which is much more faster. It saves your artist time, and use the CPU for when you want to do a background render or batch render and so on. But the whole idea is with 2020 Max 2021, Arnold is the default renderer. It's no more the scanline ones. And Arnold also supports the new bake to texture like the workflow, which is BTT, which I'm going to talk about later. And the scene convert script, which is by default added to 3ds Max now. So if you open a V-Ray or a Corona material file, it will ask you that do you want to convert these materials to a physical based material. Physical based material is also a standard default material now, which I'm going to talk about. So before I go into this, into these application again, one more great thing is Python 3 support. We all know that Python 2 was commonly used by all the coders across the globe. Python 3 got released a couple of years back, or maybe last year, and the support of Python 3 to 3ds Max was also very important, and with 2021 Max 3ds Max, Python 3 support is improved, and the API gives access to all the 3ds Max features. So but that doesn't mean that Python 2 is not supported. We still have the Python 2 support enabled for the 3ds Max command line environment. Now, what is so great about 3ds Max 2020 and what excites me is the improved viewport quality and the settings. I mean, we all know that rendering is a big pain, and it will remain for a couple of more versions or a couple of more period. Okay, but slowly I feel is we are trying to get rid of rendering, or at least we are trying to get rid of rendering one frame during your look and development process, and that's something which I'm going to talk about now. So let's move to the application side, and I'm going to talk about what's new in 3ds Max in detail. Yeah, so I'm just going to open a file. Okay, fine. Yep, and I have yes, this one. I'm just going to keep this open. So I want to show I want to talk about 2-3 more things. Like first and foremost, when you go inside the render settings, you can see the Arnold is the default render now, which is a great thing because Arnold is much more developed, and it generally allows you to do a faster rendering, and we are developing Arnold extensively, so it makes sense to have a default render Arnold. Now, other than that, when you click on the material tab, okay, when you go back to the compact material tab, pardon me for my slow machine. I had also spoken about this in my previous webinars that I'm using since I'm locked down at home. I have ordered for a new laptop which is also locked down somewhere, which I have no clue about, and hence I have to use my very old laptop, but still it works absolutely fine. In case if I have some issues, please bear with me. So the whole idea about opening the material editor was to show you that the default materials, default material now is physical based material. It's no more standard materials. If you remember, even in 2020, standard materials used to be the default ones, which we used to change it to physical and then get the advantages out of it. But right now, if you see, these are all physical materials, and all these presets which used to be inside are now available handy outside. So if you want, you can just assign any materials which you feel like to any of your selected elements in the screen as in the scene for and then just have a look at the output, and it's just going to be fantastic. I mean, the output is completely unbelievable, and all what we are seeing right now is on the viewport. So for example, if I just move around the environmental map and show you, right? So this is a viewport output. This is not a render output. And if I just want to move my environmental map, you can see the amount of reflections also being projected on the object, which is such a fantastic thing to have. I'm like, this is not all. There are so many other things which I would like to show about, but the whole idea to talk about is the default material now is the physical based material. So that's one thing which I wanted to share about. And ambient occlusion is now always visible when manipulating the viewport. For example, what do I mean by that? So let's say GDC reset this file, and I'm going to go and yes, a new file, open 2020. Okay, let me just click on one of the files. It's a very simple file. Okay, and it's a car with an environmental map. Okay, so I'm just moving it, and you can see when the moment I stop and toggle, there is a kind of wobble which happens in my file, and that's all because of the the preview. When I go inside the viewport settings and go inside the preview view settings, that's because of the progressive skyline light which acts on my scene. So it's really disturbing to see that there is this kind of light which flickers constantly, which I don't want. So if I click off the progressive skylight, it will not flicker for sure, which is good. But the whole idea is I'm losing out on my shadow part, and it's not great when you don't have the shadows in your 3D file. It does not look good. So obviously you have this shadow option on, when I can just click it on and increase the shadow part. But you have also something called as the ambient occlusion, which has been added. So when I click on the ambient occlusion, basically it will give me the contact shadows, which generally is what ambient occlusion is all about. And then I can play around with the ambient occlusion parameters to make it look actual, more realistic. And this will not flicker, and this will give me this is the substitute of the progressive scanline option. So if you, just in case, just to reiterate, I'm just going to switch off the ambient occlusion and switch on the progressive skylight. Works the same way. Yes, if I switch off the shadow, let me see, it does not work fine. Shadow is an important part, but I don't want this flickers, so I'm just going to switch off the progressive skylight and switch on the ambient occlusion. I can work on the ambient occlusion parameters, of course, yes, and that density of that as well, and get a far more better looking output. This will help me again to not click the render button, but work on the viewport to get a better quality output. So that's all what this the ambient occlusion will work like in the viewport. So the whole idea, if you see, is to make sure that you stick to your viewport and do everything without hitting the render button, because all what we want is faster performance and save time. Now let me just open a new scene and show you what's better in the environment map. So for example, we spoke about the progressive refinement in the ambient occlusion part, the new roughness support, and that I'm going to talk about the viewport enhancement now. Go back to my scene and open maybe a file which is all right, I'm just going to open this file and I'm just going to keep it here right now. And all I want to do is do something from the scratch so that you guys can have a look at it and use map. Okay, this is a simple 3D car. I have purposely intentionally kept very simple files because it relates it. We can relate it to more, because having complex files and all makes the entire demo or training look more complicated. But that's not a point. So I have a scene of a car, and which has no light in it right now, and I want to apply an environmental map to it. So what I can do is go to from the compact thing, I can go to in the material editor. Of course, I just have to give it a second, to the state material, and over here you can see we have materials, maps, OSL, and stuff like that. If you remember, if you have opened the previous material libraries and all, there used to be limited ones, but now there are tons and tons of things. Now I'm going to go inside the map tab, okay, map tab, and I'm going to leave everything. And in the environment, if you notice, there is a new thing called as the HDRI environment. Now this is really a great thing to have in your 3ds Max. Trust me, when I was watching the beta of this, I was really excited excited and waiting for 2021 to release, because this is something which really excited me, and I'm sure it will excite a lot of you guys as well. So I'm going to import the HDRI environment and drop it here. Now, if you see, when I dropped it, it's asking me to select an HDRI file, and anyone who has not downloaded the HDRI file, don't worry, because you get some 10 to 15 HDRI files default installed when you install 3ds Max 2021. So if you see, it's in the program files, 3ds Max 2021 map folder. There is a folder called an HDRI map, and these are all 2K HDRI files, which is free with the software. I forgot the name of the company which has which has contributed this maps, but yeah, it's all over the web. You can just go and read that. But yes, these are the files which has been shared by that company, and you can utilize it the way you want. In case if you're not keen on these, and when you work with this and then you feel that you need to have some much more better files, you can download it from anywhere, which I'm going to talk about later. So let me just import maybe a file which is old bus depot 2k. I'm just going to open this, and yes, so what happens is there is an environment which we can't see, and of course if you remember that this map will only affect your object. Okay, so I think I'm just going to open this and try to rotate and see. Okay, it's not working. So let me press the button 8. Okay, so 8 on the keyboard will give me the environment map settings. Okay, yeah, and let me connect the output to the output map. Okay, sorry, it was off. I'm just going to switch it on. Yes, it's there now. So now you can see I have the reflection of the environment falling on my very simple looking car. I'm like, it's nothing. I'm like, it's a very simple file, but you can see the reflections and the highlights falling on the car, which makes it look pretty realistic, photorealistic, I can say. So if I go and try to tweak the environmental map, I'm just going to go back and say I can rotate the map, and you can see the reflections falling on the object. And this is the parameters of the HDRI map which I imported. You can import any damn HDRI file, and all you can do is you can just tweak the rotate the HDRI map. You can play around with the height of the map. If you want the map to be pulled up or down, you can do that. You can also tilt the map in X or Y axis, which is a real cool thing to have. Okay, if you ever want to change the map, all you can do is go inside and pick another map, which is an outdoor map, I guess, or no, it's not an outdoor map. It's inside the house. So obviously it doesn't look realistic when you have a car inside the house. So let me just open and get something like a sky dome or something, and all I can do is just move, and you can see how quickly or easily is the map affecting my car and the shader. So it's absolutely easy and very exciting. So let me just go and see if I have another map of a night scene. Yeah, and you can see how much is the light now actually falling on your on the car. So if you have a scene where you have so many lights moving in the background and stuff like that, you can very easily play around with this. I don't want to play around with the height and stuff right now, so I'm just going to keep it as it is, and maybe a little bit of tilt would help me for some other reason I'm going to talk about. Okay, and not only that, you also have parameters for exposure. Now remember something, HDRI are not JPEG images. Okay, these are high definition range images, so that's why it carries all the information of highlight and shadow areas, which means if I reduce the exposure, you can see it's not getting grayed out in that higher exposure areas, but in fact it is dimming the light and it's reducing the exposure, and that this looks much more realistic than reducing the exposure of just a JPEG image. That's the beauty of it. So you can play around with the exposure and of the image, and you can just play around with the viewport highlights and stuff like that. If you want, you can just also work with the contrast, which in turn will work on the 3D object as well. And if you feel that it has to be like for example, if I import a outdoor scene, I think this is a good outdoor scene, or maybe this one, I'm not sure. Let me see. Sorry, I just want to move it, and I want to make sure that this is an evening shot, so I can just change the color of this and make it look more eveningish. I know it's too exaggerated once, but I can still work around with it and reduce the exposure so that the sun actually looks like it's setting. Okay, and just play around with the highlights and stuff to make it look much more natural and realistic. And you can see how the reflections will travel on the surface of the car based on the highlight in the image. So it is one fantastic thing to have, and I'm really, very excited to showcase this. Now, something like, I'm just going to go back to the same shot and show you the exposures can be brought back to normal. All right, tint I don't want, so I'm going to keep it little bluish because of maybe, it's a night shot. It looks more natural when you have a little bluish tone. And yes, I can go down and click on. Okay, you also have something like clamping, which, if you keep the clamp on, it will actually kind of restrict your highlights to bleach away from the scene. Now, coming back to another one, there's something called as background blur. For people who know photography or not photography, even everyone now using a camera, a mobile phone camera, you know that the background blur actually focuses more on the character's face and gives more like a professional photography. So there is a background blur. You can increase the amount of the background blur in case if you go close to the character or the object. It makes more sense to make the background blur so that the entire focus is on the object and the background looks blurred, so that you give a depth of field effect to the character of the object, which is very cool about it. And you can increase the sampling. If you reduce the sampling, you can see a lot of noise being created on the highlights. So increase the samplings to get rid of those, and looks fantastic. Now, the another interesting thing for me was that when I move this car in 3D space, it looks like the car is basically floating in air, right? It looks like the car is in air, especially when I am moving from the top. So what I can do is there is another option for me, which is create a ground projection. So when I click on the create ground projection, okay, and maybe just make it 1000 for something, okay, and when I move, okay, let me just increase the exposure. You can see the ground, okay, and you can see the ground now actually sticks to the car. Okay, and this is the beauty of ground projection. On the viewport, you don't want the object to be floating in the air, and you get it. So let me just change the image because that looks very dark and you have no clue on how does it look. Small hanger. Okay, let me just take this and see how it looks. Yes, it's a lake scene, and if I switch off the ground projection, you know that the car looks floating in air. But when you click on the ground projection, and of course I can change the position in X, Y, and Z of the for the object, and I can also increase the tripod height. And tripod height is basically from where you're taking the picture. Is basically to fake the background on this object, and you can see it looks more as if it's the object which is standing in front of a lake and being created clicked a picture of. So that's something which you can play around with it. And of course we also have the ability to move the ground plane or change the high HDRI images, and yes, move the object to make it look as if it's actually standing on the surface of whatever you want. You can say. I have some HDRI maps downloaded from the net. So even if you go and Google say free HDRI, there will be a lot of HDRI maps which will be available, which you can just download and use them based on your requirement. There are tons and tons of free HDRI maps available on the web. Some are 2K, some are 4K, depending on how bigger you want. You can just play around with them. Let me just wait for a second. The HDRI map is loading, so I'll have to give it a break. Ah. Yeah. Anyways, that's also a darker image or stuff like that. I'm not very sure, so I need to play around with the exposure. Yeah, whatever. And so on. So I hope you understood, in detail about the viewport enhancements. Of course, I'm just going to reset this file and open it once again for a reason that is that I wanted to show you how accurate would be the viewport output be as compared to okay, I'm going to show that in some other file, other reference, so let it be right now. So the next thing to talk about is PBR shaders. I don't know how many of you guys have used the PBR shaders. Now it's physical based renders shaders. These are high quality textures which now are available, or maybe you can say compatible with 3ds Max. Okay, every time which facilities modern physically based rendering and real-time engines, especially people who work in the game environment, use this a lot for simplified PBR materials workflow and so on. So the viewport of 3ds Max also supports physical materials now, and the output which you see would be much more photorealistic than what you can achieve, what you would have achieved in the previous older version of 3ds Max. So let me just jump and show you how do you create a PBR shader, or maybe how do you apply them. So let me just go back and uh, um, all right, let me just try with this first. Okay, I have a scene. Okay, and it has nothing in it now currently. It's basically just an object. And what I want to do first is when you go inside, okay, and apart from the material editor, okay, all the materials, the standard materials, as I said, have been changed to physical based materials, right? So I'm just going to, okay, let me just close all this dialog box. I can go inside the material, and instead of physical material, I can use a PBR material. Okay, PBR materials are now by default available inside. So I'm going to go inside the slate mode once again to showcase what PBR materials are all is all about and how does it work. So I can import maybe a metal rough PBR material. Okay, so I've said that this is going to be a metal. So when I go and say it's a metal, you have this base color, metalness, roughness, AO map, room, emit, a normal map, and opacity map, and so on. So when you click on this material, these are the things which pop up. Like, it will ask you for all these layers or all these passes to be applied, and because of all these passes, the object is going to look much more photorealistic. Now how does it work is basically, also let me just put a teapot on top of this. Oh, sorry, I don't know whether it is on top, so I'm just going to go put a teapot and keep it here. All right. And first of all, as I said, I want an environmental map because I'm a fan of environmental map, and PBR shaders also require an environmental map. So I'm going to go back to I do that, or maybe I should have. Okay, just give me a second, please. Mhm. Okay, let me just search for a second. That's going to be HDRI. Okay, all right. I'm just going to take a new scene altogether. And let's say, okay, all right, this works as well for me. It's as good as having a very simple file, scene file. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to have a very rusty looking teapot. Okay, the best thing is to try out with the teapot. Now, when I go inside the material tab, and I'll say that import the HDRI environment, and I can have same old bus depot once. And yes, I forgot to apply it. Press 8 so that I can push this back to the environmental map, and here I have, okay, and there is no maps, there's no material attached to it. So I'm going to go inside and say import a PBR material, which is a rough PBR material. All right, and now when you click here, you can see these are the options, these are the materials which you need to import or maybe get it from somewhere and put it. Now it is so easy to create a PBR shader now because you have a PBR material available with you, and it's just a click of button which you can just go through it. So I can go online, okay, and I'm going to go say Google it and say free PBR. Okay, so when I say free PBR, I can see there are free PBR sites where you can download from. Please go through it. There is a site which is free PBR which I have downloaded from. So please go through the terms and conditions. Make sure you're not using it for commercial purpose. Even if there are a couple of them which are okay to be used for commercial, it's up to them or you guys, but please read the TNCs before you use them. So for training purposes, it's absolutely fine. So I have downloaded a series of a bundle of PBR textures or shaders from the free PBR thing. Now what does it, how does it come like, is basically nothing other than images. So when I go inside and go demos, max, and say PBR shaders, when I go inside each PBR shaders, you can see they are just PNGs or JPEGs and stuff. So these are some fabric ones. I'm just going to open them and show you that these are the fabric shaders which I have and different passes. Okay, now these can be achieved or downloaded from anyone, anywhere. What I can do, I have two options: either load them in my 3ds Max asset library. So we all know that 3ds Max has an asset library, so you can just go and give it a path, and through that asset library you can just browse them. Like if you want the fabric one, if you want some carpet one, if you want something else, you can just go inside and browse them and apply. So what I'm going to do is I just have some PBR shaders which I was very excited about is outside, like this one. So when I just zoom in and show you this is basically a bitmap file extension. So let's create a metallic one for this. So when I click on my content browser, there for this like ornate brass, I have its normal map, I have its metallic map, I have its height map, I have its albedo, which is the basic color, and I have its AO map. So I'm just going to drag this albedo map and put it in the albedo. It's written, so I don't have to worry about. I'm going to select the metallic and put it in metalness. I'm going to put the AO in the ambient occlusion, the occlusion map. I'm going to put the normal one in the normal map. Okay, and in case if I have some brass, metallic, or let's say metallic has already been added. If there are some more, you can just try out that, but I don't have to worry about. All I need to do is apply this material. Okay, and this material has been applied, and you can see on the viewport, okay, how accurately you can see the output. Okay, and not just that, you can also see the details of the reflection and stuff like that on the viewport itself. Remember one thing, I have not yet rendered anything. Okay, I'm just going to go inside the viewport again, and kind of try to rotate the map in the background, and you can see how easily I can get the reflections and the light falling on them, and create some fantastic looking output. So not only that, if I want something like a grungy metal, so let's say I'm going to go open and select and see something else. If I have, let's try to do that. The ground one is something which I want to try for long, but I didn't get time. So let me do it in directly during the session. Ground displacement map, that would be in the roughness maybe, and then there is some normal map. Let me see if this works for me. Everything is ground metalness. Okay, there has to be no metalness, so I'm just going to remove the metalness in this. And yes, if you go close and see that you have the a shader which has this can be used for for a wall, or for a ground and stuff, where you don't have to really go close and see, and you can see how easily you're getting the depth and the feeling of it, right? So it's as easy as you can see. I also have some more other kind of metals. I'm very excited to try that as well. Let me go back and see if I have some. Okay, this is cool. I open this and I apply this thing to the, all right, this is to the albedo. Okay, and the metalness will go here, and when I'm doing this, you can see the change happening. Okay, and this will be the creamy metal normal PNG, normal map here. Yep, and the creamy metal normal. Okay, there are two like normal. There are two normal maps. That's okay. I can just use any one of them. And if you want, there is creamy ground. What is this? Roughness. So let me see if there is something called the roughness as well. Roughness. Okay, I'm just going to put this. Occlusion is something which I have missed. So where is this occlusion pass? I'm not finding it. Okay, I somehow lost occlusion. Let me just see, apply this and try it out. No harm in it, but you can see how you have this shader being created, which has a complete rusty metallic look. And not just that, you also, if you want some more reflection and stuff like that, you can very easily go and apply reflection. Like for example, you can just increase the metalness of this, or reduce the roughness of this, and so on. And just you can also go inside the metalness parameters, tile them, tweak the parameters and so on to make it look more like an environmental map or texture map or whatever. I'm like, it's up to you where you want to try it out. So yep, that's the beauty of this. And of course, what I was trying to tell you is, okay, let's make this little more cooler by clicking on the ground position and say about making it 1000, so that it actually looks as if it's projected on the ground. Yeah, and to be very honest, when I go close and hit the render button once, let's see how it looks like. There is no difference in the look. I'm like, there could be 10% difference in the final render and the viewport render. So the whole idea is, if a person is doing look and development, he or she does not have to actually go and hit the render button again and again and again, and this will do the job by itself. So the whole idea to talk about was the enhanced viewport capabilities to show your PBR shaders and stuff like that. There is something called as bake to texture, which is also very interesting. I'm going to play that video which talks about the bake to texture workflow. This is very useful, especially in the game environment where you have created a very heavy 3D mesh, and you don't want the 3D mesh because it will take that many number of polygons. So what you can do is, you can, like how I created the PBR shader, there are two objects here. One is actual 3D shape with all these, two complicated mesh, and there is one simple object which has been kept in the same plane of the previous one. Okay, and I can just click on the scanline render, and what you need to do is there is something which is called as bake to texture. Okay, so you select both of them. Once you select both of them, you can just go to bake to texture option, or first you need to select the object which has the textures in it, or to which you need to bake, and select 2-3 passes. In this case we have the diffuse and the normal, and you can select where you want to save the passes. You can select the resolution of the pass, whether it has to be 2K, it has to be 512 or 1K or whatever. So you can choose the resolution. In this case it's 512, and it will be projected, so you can select from where the projection should happen from. Okay, so you can pick from the list where the projection, where the output file is going to be all about. So it has to be the same in the viewport and the render output, and you select on what it has to project. Okay, so once you've selected the object on which it has to project, okay, you can just generate, go and click on the reset, because this does not have the grid has to project. This grid is going to be projecting the map on the object, and it has to be exactly in the center so that it projects from all 360 degrees, because this is a 360 degree around object. So once it's done, once you've selected the size or grid of the projection, all you can do is ray trace from the vertex normals is something which you can click on. These are some certain options which you need to select, and select the output file where the output material is going to be gone. So you can say it has to be a new material. Okay, and it has to be a new PBR material. We already know what PBR materials are all about. So the first one is going to be for the base color, and the second one is going to be for the normal map. So we just have two textures for now. In short, what are we doing is creating a new PBR shader. Okay, and which format do you want? It's for 3ds Max for right now. I'm just going to select that, and it's going to say MK KT. This is creating a bake texture, and it's going to calculate the bit tangent per pixel and so on. So we can just select that tick mark and output as a normal bump or whatever. You can just select that, click yes or no, and once it's done, okay, you can go to the preference and click on the MIKKT button, which will actually use the projection technique and give you the detail of the textures. So you can try to click on the calculate bit tangent per pixel option if you want, so that when you zoom into the object, the texture will automatically multiply and show you the high resolution texture, and when you zoom out of the object, it will be normal, low resolution. So when it's done, and when I split the objects, you can see the one on the left is nothing but a PBR shader which we have created out of a complete 3D mesh. Okay, this is going to be a very lighter file, and it's very easier in case if you want to take this to a game engine, and can be handled very easily. So that's the beauty of having a baked texture output. So there are more videos and learning materials online. In case if you want to get in depth of baked textures, please feel free to do that. Now there are some improved OSL shaders. Okay, I'm going to go fast in this OSL shaders, because we all know that OSL shaders were added in 3ds Max 2019. Okay, and since then it's been quite a well-known and widely used shader. But in 3ds Max 2021, there are about 121 shaders which has been added to the OSL shading list. For example, when I go inside the general material, I'm going to go switch off, and you can see maps. You have OSL map. All these materials are now freely available inside as an OSL shader. Now, how does this work? Let me just go and click on maybe colored noise 3D. So I'm just dragging this color noise 3D to this, and if I want, what I can do is, instead of this the metallic thing which we created last time, the previous previous demo, I can connect the output of this to the base color of the physical material which I already have. So when I just give me a second to update the shaders, or maybe I'm just going to remove all the unwanted stuff. All right, should work. High quality. Let me see how it works, how it looks like. It should take a while to update. That's because of my old system. If not, then I'm going to delete this and import a new physical material. Apply the physical material to the teapot. It's getting applied, so I'm just going to wait for a second, and output of this will go to the base color map. And let's see what I have in return. Yes, it is applied, but it's kind of taking a while. Yes, it's dead. It's dead. Yeah. So it's taking time to refresh for some reason. I don't have no idea about. Yeah, but you can see this is a shader which I applied. Generally, we can do it using a JPEG image or an image. But then the beauty of the OSL shader is it's a plugin. It has all the options to tweak around. Like for example, if you want to scale the scale up the number of cells, you want to have cells instead of this, or you want to have it look like a hash, or you want to look like a simplex, and so on. You can just do it at very ease and play around with the octave, the luminosity, the low steps. All of these can be tweaked directly using all these shaders, and these shaders are free of cost, right? So it's all available inside the tool now. You can also apply them to the bump map and see how it works for you, and so on. And not only that, there are many of other tools as well, OSL shaders. For example, let me just say curves, curves, and say it has color curves. Okay, so what does color curve do is basically I'm just going to import the color curves, and I want to do some color correction to it. So the output of this will go here. Let me break the tangents for this, and the output of a color will go to the base color of the teapot, right? So what have I done is it's a procedural working technique in which I can do a color correction in between my between my OSL cell noise and the physical base shader. So I like the cell noise. It's fantastic. But what I also want is to have a kind of a color correction done in between before it goes through the to the shader. So in that case, I'm gonna just, okay, pardon me for the slow response of the system. I told you this is really a slow system to work on, but it shouldn't be an issue now. I'm just going to give it a second. Yes. So you can all see the teapot on the left, and I'm just going to select the curves. All right, I'm not going to push this a lot, but for a second, yes, I'm going to select the maps, and if I want to do some kind of a color correction, I can do that. So in terms of tonality, if I want to add a little bit of green tone to the entire teapot shader, I can do that. I can change the value over here manually, or I can just toggle it with the curves and randomly apply shading color correction to the entire to the entire shader, which is really fantastic. If you want to play around with just the red curve, you can do that, and so on. I'm not going to stress on this right now because I'm a little worried about the performance of the system. But I hope you guys understood on how do you apply a new curve, a color correction curve to the shader, and then that goes to the base material of the physical shade material, and then you can do a color correction to the entire scene. Another highlight is the chamfer improvement in the modeling part. Okay, it has its own quick enhancements, because if you remember in the previous version, that is 3ds Max 2020, 2019 and 20, we have been constantly working on the chamfer tool of the of the modeling vertical. Like for example, if you want, if you don't have to stick and go into and work on the details of the thing, you have options of working or giving a chamfer on the edge of an object. So chamfer option also has this radius bias where you can just give some kind of a curves to the object. And not only that, let me go back and show you the entire engine. Select one of the parts, and it also has options like select by weight or select by edges and stuff like that. For example, you can select the edge or only one edge of a box particularly in place, and if you ever want to do a chamfer to one corner of this object, whereas keep the other corners intact, you can select and create a chamfer only to that particular corner, which is much more handy. So in this scene also, you select the edge and have a kind of a crease or a weight created, so that will work only in that particular edge. It also, the best part about this is it also keeps the UVs intact. For many times you have an asset which has already moved ahead in the game engine part, maybe for certain reason, and then you realize that there needs to be some more chamfering or beveling on the edge. Now we all know that when you do that, it is going to spoil your UV map and you might have to redo the entire thing again, whereas this new tool will keep the UVs intact and does not spoil them. So that's a very fantastic thing to do re-chamfering or re-beveling even at the stage where it's gone ahead and you don't have to retouch the UVs further. Yeah, and then you can see there are some more parameters, some more enhancements in terms of giving inserting more at the corners, which will not create pinches or to the object. So you can work on, so chamfer is really cool. Like there are tons of more enhancements and videos on the web. I would recommend you guys to just Google them and have a dedicated session, see videos based on chamfer tool on or maybe area as well. Yeah. uh, Substance updates. Yep, there are a couple of more. Okay, there's one last thing I would like to add. I know there's we are running short of time, but then one very interesting thing which I didn't realize that was missing. So I'm just going to open a scene and let's see what I have to show. What scene should I use? Okay, let me try out with this scene. I'm not sure how it's going to happen, but yeah, the whole idea was to show that if I have this shader, and I'm going to change the shader to a night shader because I want to have some more highlights coming on this guy. Okay, and for some reason I'm going to rotate this to wherever, and the exposure is going to be less, so you can see there is less highlights on the object. Now this is going to be very interesting because assume that this is a studio environment and you want to have lights on, like a specific light on the object. So in many cases that the photographers have additional lights kept on the head or the side as a face light or a highlights and so on. So here there is another tool called as HDRI light. You can see this. Okay, this is going to be an additional light along with the map. So let me just try this and connect this to the HDRI file. I'm not sure. Okay, sorry. Yeah, and see, select umbrella, for instance, and okay, whether it's done. Okay, I don't think it's done. Yeah, let's try to connect this to the additional light. Yeah, yeah. And when I do that, okay, what happens is suddenly you can see that there has been an additional light to it. Like I can decrease the exposure. Okay, I can enable or disable the light. This is a new light which has been added inside the scene. So you can change the aspect of this. You can play around the angle of the umbrella which is there. You can also change the color of the umbrella light which is falling on top of it. And there are multiple parameters which you can play around with. Other than that, you also have something called as the create point. Like for example, let me just make this thing bigger. Yeah, and let's say I say create point, and this create point can be moved wherever you want, and you can have the light placed in that particular direction. Now remember, this is an additional light which uh, your DOP or your director is asking for, and this is something which you can apply it directly where you want and play around with the of the scene and stuff like that. So obviously, if this object is a metallic object, for example, let me just say I want a physical material, and this physical material can be okay, let me just go, and I know that there is some metalness in this. Okay, last one, I'm just going to select all, and let's say apply this because it looks cool. It has more shininess to the scene. Yeah, just want the refresh to happen. Yeah, and with that, what I'm going to do is select the map, the additional map, and say point. Where is the point gone? The point is here, and when I move the point, you can see my highlights moving, right? And this gives me a very photorealistic output, and the light is placed exactly where I want in the scene. So this is one very nice thing. And you can also, I guess I haven't tried that, but you can select this old traditional tool of 3ds Max, where you can select the area where you want the highlight to come. So not seeing that, but yeah, there are capabilities on this where you can just select the area and the highlights will start moving this. Okay, I'm not going to get into that, but yes, having an additional light is a fantastic thing. You can also say that visible to the camera. When you say visible to the camera, it should be popping out on somewhere in the scene. Yep, here it is. So you know that the light is coming from there. Okay, you don't want it to be in the camera, so you can just remove that. And if you want to have another kind of light, you can just change the type of light and apply another type of light uh, from the library which is there by default given to you. So there are a couple of more enhancements, substance textures enhancements, which is again very quite detailed in it. I'm not going to talk about that in this webinar now. Weighted normal modifiers, pro sound improvements. There is support for unlimited audios and the higher bit depth audio files, which is again you can just go through the documentation and learn more about it. So with that, I would like to keep it open for a Q&A. I'm very happy that a lot of people were attentive, and there is people who were there since the beginning are still there, and that gives me more confidence on having more webinars in the future. So yes, now it's the time to have a Q&A, and please feel free to drop in your questions, and I would be more than happy to answer them.
So while the Q&A session is happening, I will be posting the poll questions. So that will be flashing on your screen. So we request you to please, share your feedback. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, Avinash, for jumping in. I just forgot to tell that. Yeah, and we have poll questions which are running on all the webinars. Please feel free. Please request you to to answer those questions, and we have some exciting goodies to to our winners of the poll questions. Okay, so there is one question from Manoj, and that is Gunjan, I'm sorry you said you can't hear, but I just read that message. I hope it was I was audible at the later part of the presentation. Rahul, is there any link to learn basics of 3ds Max for beginners? Yes, Rahul. You can go to area.autodesk.com and search for 3ds Max as a product, and there you can you have videos for beginners. Alternatively, you can go to the YouTube channel of Autodesk. There is a YouTube learning channel, okay, Autodesk learning channel. Search for 3ds Max, or just say 3ds Max Autodesk 3ds Max learning channel. You'll see tons of resources and videos for beginners. Yeah, Manoj's question was, what is the difference between compact material mode and slate material mode? Okay, so the difference is slate material mode gives me the background of the compact material, one particular node. If I want to if I want to use them as a procedural shading network, okay, so if I want to connect one shading network to another and to any of its parameters, the slate material is more handy, and that's why it is used. Harish, you asked me when is okay, one second, I just escaped. Possible to create HDR image using 3ds Max by importing images. So Harish asked, is it possible to create an HDRI image using 3ds Max by importing images? Yes and no. So HDRI images can be created when you export an image from any 3D application, because you can export them as an EXR file, and those EXR files will also have a separate passes like normal pass, occlusion pass, beauty pass, and all these passes. Now that's where it actually came from. Okay, now HDRI images which I am using or we use generally are overexposed, or are has multiple exposures basically. That's why they are live images. Now if you import a JPEG in 3ds Max, okay, and then I'm sure you're asking this, like, can you import JPEG images in 3ds Max and output them as an HDRI maps? Yes and no, because when you try to adjust the exposures, the JPEG images will not have the details, and they will just be grayed out, or they will tear off and stuff like that. So you won't get that high definition detail. Whereas there you will get details in the areas where there is a 3D object. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. When will 2020 version be released? It's already released, Harish. So any customer who are eligible, are into the subscription, can directly download and start using them. Anup says, get rid of image IO error. How can I get rid of the image IO error? So Anup, I'm not sure when do you get this error. If you are using 2021, I mean, like, and you're using an Arnold GPU and it gives you an error, what you need to do is you need to go to the Max render settings and click on the 3ds Max legacy, use legacy texture. Okay, so that should stop giving you the IO error. Just try it out. In case if it's not, then what you can also do is put this in the 3ds Max forum. You can Google Autodesk 3ds Max forum and put this error message. You will see a lot of answers there, and if it solves, good for you. If it not, then you can post that error message there, and the support team will get back to you on that. Rendering time more on Arnold render. Okay, now okay, it's difficult to pronounce the name, but rendering time is more on Arnold render. Depends. So because Arnold has been made quite simplified, so you need to work on the rendering parameters, as in the camera anti-aliasing, that increase the camera AA and reduce the other diffuse, specular, and subsurface scattering and so on. That will speed up the rendering process. If you still have questions, what I would recommend you to go to the Autodesk Arnold page. In the 3ds Max setting match page, there is learning, and they have given detailed learning materials on individual parameters on how do you optimize the scene file. Just try it out. I would recommend. So Harish, the ground projection actually is it's a projection thing. It should work on the render as well. But you know what? We generally don't use that as an output. It's just for the viewport to be seen. Currently, it works only with the scanline renders, not with the Arnold one, is what I have heard. But in the current, and of course, this is not the final version of the ground projection. We are still working on it. We are still trying to make it much more efficient, and yes, it should work the way it shows in the viewport. Improvement on vertex paint right now, painting. Yeah, Abhishek, I mean, unfortunately, there is no updates on the paint thing. But yes, there are a couple of people who have asked me on this, the Vertex paint. I would request you, in case if it's your daily job and you require this feature a lot, you can go to the forum or maybe go to 3ds Max Ideas. 3ds Max Idea page is very popular now and gaining more popularity. You can post your ideas or you can read others post, and if you feel that this post is already being posted by somebody else, you can vote them, and the more the number of votes, the more chances are the more it will be accepted as the new feature request. So please try to post it on 3ds Max Ideas, Abhishek, I would recommend. So Swapnil says which material is supported by Arnold. It's basically the standard material and the physical material, the PBR shaders, they're all supported by Arnold. There is one question from Pratik. Let me just read it. It's a big one. My scene files are heavy and we're using Excel PBR textures, man, and a long time to load, but the team size of the file a copy to make it. Pratik, since you're pulling the file from the network, it all depends on the network bandwidth. I would request you to, and I also want to know how what is your network bandwidth? Like it's like 10 gig or just a normal LAN cable or whatever. Try it out having the same setup on the local system and open it. There should be a huge difference because um, we can assure that the performance from the system is better, but we do not guarantee when it has been pulled from the network, because the network bandwidth could be choked. There are multiple people who are pulling data and pushing data from the same network, so definitely there's going to be a huge lag when you try to access things from the network. So you need to work on that. Yes, Shahidul, I'm sorry you had also asked for the previous webinar videos. I will definitely, after this webinar, we will be sharing all the videos of all the webinars which happened in the past, and hopefully that will be of help. So Rama Mani has asked, can these materials work with the V-Ray materials? So V-Ray materials also support PBR, I guess. I'm not very sure. But when it comes, if you want to convert the V-Ray materials, or if you still want to work with V-Ray materials, you will have to separately get the PBR. Obviously, the PBR materials are free, downloaded from the net. You can use it for any application. But these materials which I showed are separate from V-Ray materials, so you cannot club both of them. Like you cannot apply this material, this physical based material, because this is more supported by Arnold. You cannot push them inside the V-Ray materials. All right, I think we have all the poll questions done. I'm going to go through all the questions once again later at the end. And if I find that there are some questions which I have not answered, I would definitely would like to, reply you guys on an email. And BIM 360 can work in 3ds Max. Mohammad Raja. Um, you know what? BIM 360 is more of like a project management tool. uh, 3ds Max files can be pushed to BIM 360. I myself don't use 3ds BIM 360 much, not much. I don't use it, but we have tried this with one of my colleagues in office, Preeti Rao, if you have known. I have shared the files to her and she uploaded in BIM 360 and that was visible there. The only catch I think was the materials was not available, but rest the 3D file was visible in BIM 360. But if you need more details, I can get back to you on that. I have your email ID and stuff like that. All right, guys. Yes, you can download the version of 3ds Max 2020 from the I doubt, because the trial version is one version below the current version. You still can try it out, but if not, then you'll have to live with 3ds Max 2020, but not 21. Rahul, I would, just write this thing here itself. It's basically 3ds Max learning on YouTube and send it to all. I'm just sending it to all. This is the place where you can work. You can, have a detailed study on 3ds Max. So okay, all right, guys, thank you so much for your time. We are not slightly, we are much overboard of time, but do send your feedbacks, and we would be more than happy to do such more webinars. Increase your knowledge on products, share knowledge. And yes, thank you so much for being with us, and hope to see you soon on our next webinars. So, okay, lighting videos. Rohit has asked for lighting videos. Rohit, if you can just elaborate on lighting in 3D. If it's lighting in 3D, I would be more than happy to do that. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, guys. And Prasad, my name is Samit Shetty, and I'm based out of Bangalore. I'm the technical solution manager with Autodesk India. Great. Thank you so much once again, and be home, be safe, and keep learning. Thank you so much.